Alright guys, so in this video I'm going to be ranking all the 14 Big Ten stadiums from worst to best. And, it's all subjective, it's just my opinion, but generally we're probably going to have similar lists. And then at the end of the video, I'll kind of talk about where I would put USC and the Coliseum and then the Rose Bowl with UCLA when they join the conference, where I would put those stadiums in terms of, their ranking on this list. But kicking it off, the worst stadium in the Big Ten. This is not hard. It is Ryan Field, Northwestern. Of course, they are getting a new stadium opening in 2026, but right now and for the next few years, they are stuck at Ryan Field, and with them opening a new stadium, it means there is no reason to renovate the current Ryan Field, which desperately needs it. It is a de facto high school stadium, and there are a lot of high school stadiums I'm sure that are better than Ryan Field overall. There's nothing to it. It's got the smallest capacity in the Big Ten, and it comes in at number 14. Very obvious. I mean, if I wanted to look at it, I would say the lower section, it's a unique design in terms of their bleachers, but there's just nothing to it. So it's got to be number 14. Again, they are getting a new stadium in 2026, and the renderings of it, I think they did a very good job with that new stadium that Northwestern is building, and it's rare for colleges to get a brand new stadium, so that's a big thing for the Big Ten. At number 13, it's going to be SECU Stadium, home of Maryland, and the reason I have this one at number 13, I just hate their upper deck. And I think they made a big mistake making the upper deck the way it is, how big the seating is, because I would say 70% of the time there is a lot of empty seats in the upper deck at SECU Stadium. I believe this name changes like every year with Maryland. Every year it's a different name, but right now it's SECU. And I would say overall, one of the main problems you get with a school like Maryland, it's kind of like middle of the pack in the Big Ten. You're going to have some big games. I would say the biggest game Maryland football has had at home that I can remember. I mean, actually, the Ohio State game last year was semi-big, but what was there, like a Thursday or Friday night game against Penn State where Penn State crushed them? That was like their big home game. I just can't remember this stadium creating any sort of home field advantage, and just the overall design of it where you've got kind of just the one section of upper deck seating. I'm not a fan of it. I think it looks ugly, so it comes in at number 13. Moving down to number 12, it's SHI Stadium, the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. So this is pretty much your basic generic, middle tier stadium in college football. I like that. The one thing I will say that it has going for it, it's small. So if Rutgers ever became good, it'd be very easy to sell this place out. Very small upper deck, and you probably would get a good environment. It is hard to gauge how good this stadium is in terms of home field advantage because Rutgers has been just so horrifically bad. They're not selling it out. Even if they did sell it out, there's such a talent disparity between them and some of these teams in the Big Ten. You really can't tell. So I'm going to put this stadium at number 12. It's very generic. It's very bland. One of the big issues I have with a lot of these, there's just nothing unique about it. I need something unique to move it up. There's nothing there. It's a little bit better than Maryland because with Maryland, you've got the obnoxious upper deck. You've got a bunch of empty seats. At least they've got very limited seating to where it's something that can be sold out easily. It comes in at number 12. Moving to number 11, it is the first of 3 Memorial Stadiums. Yes, there are 3 stadiums named Memorial Stadium in the Big Ten, and it's Indiana's Memorial Stadium, which has recently underwent some renovations. Now, when it comes to this stadium, it does remind me of Virginia Tech, the way the seating is. It's just one massive lower bowl. And, I mean, when your program is good and when you're selling it out, it works. The problem is Indiana hasn't been doing any of those things. If you guys remember, Indiana's breakout year was when there were literally no fans allowed in the stands back in 2020. So Indiana, me personally, I do tend to like the 2-deck approach over just the mass wall of seats you see at like Virginia Tech and Indiana here. This isn't the worst thing, especially if you can sell it out. It is a very imposing environment if you've got like a section of seating that's like 300 rows back, and they did renovate the one end zone, so I will give them credit for that. But just the design of it combined with the lack of overall environment during most games, I can't remember the last time Indiana's had a big home game. I mean, I'd probably go back to like that first game against Ohio State in 2017 maybe was their last kind of semi-big one. I know they beat Michigan at home. Was that in 2020? I'm guessing that was in 2020. But either way, that stadium comes in at number 11. Moving to number 10, it is Illinois Memorial Stadium. So the only reason this is really at number 10, you could very easily argue it should be lower just looking at it. There's not much to it. They've tried to renovate it, but the only reason I have it up at number 10, the exterior architecture, let's be honest, it's very impressive. So I was very impressed by that. Yes, the interior of it leaves a lot to be desired, and there have been different mocks on a end zone renovation that would add seating to the end zone. And you know what? Maybe they might be able to do something like that after Illinois' breakout season last year, but I fear that Illinois might come back down to earth this season. We'll have to see if they can maintain that. There's not much to the stadium. I like the exterior. The one positive, it is very easy to sell out. So if Illinois did get good over the course of a few years, they would be able to theoretically produce good environments and easily sell out games, and maybe even have a few big night games there. On to number 9, it is Ross-Ade Stadium, and this would be lower, but they are currently going through a renovation that's going to close their end zone, thankfully. But I do think Ross-Ade is a really good environment. When you look at night games at Purdue, it seems like there's just nothing around the stadium. So it creates this kind of imposing pitch black vibe to the area. And, there's not much to it. It's just a lower section of seating. So that's why it's at number 9. But I do think it does give Purdue a good environment. Maybe I just remember a few big wins that they've had there. But I would put it at number 9. And you guys can see there's been several times. I mean, when I looked up renovation photos for Purdue or like renderings, there's like 10 different renderings of different stadium or of different end zone ideas. So they've gone through the ringer there, but I do think they are finally renovating their end zone. So that's why it's at number 9, along with the fact, you've got the fans close to the action, good seats, and it does get loud when Purdue is good there. Moving to number 8, it is Huntington Bank Stadium. So this is another one I would say is very neutral. This is a newer stadium. It was built in 2009. And, for Minnesota, the Vikings played here a few years. You got the 2-deck approach. There's just nothing unique about it. That's why I think it's kind of perfect right smack dab in the middle at number 8. It's not as bad as some of the stadiums because it has 2 decks and it is legitimate. It's kind of newer, but there's nothing unique. So I would say it's number 8 right now. As for the environment, I do remember a big game where they faced Penn State back with Tanner Morgan, maybe back in 2021 when they were ranked inside the top 10. And it was a good environment. I think that was like a noon start time too, so they can rev it up there. But overall, the stadium, it's not going to wow you, but it certainly isn't the worst thing in the world in the Big Ten because it is at least semi-modern. So it comes in at number 8. Moving to number 7, it is Spartan Stadium. So Spartan Stadium for me is really hit or miss, and it kind of just, like, Michigan State has been so hit or miss with the way their program has been, not making a bowl last year, going to a New Year's Six bowl the year before that. Spartan Stadium, if you get it, if Michigan State is good, if it's a night game, if it's versus Michigan or Ohio State, it's going to be pretty revved up. Now, last year against Ohio State, Michigan State was not good. It was not a good environment, and they do or they can tend to have issues selling the upper deck tickets. I've seen multiple times where there are sections of empty seats at Spartan Stadium. Overall, the stadium, I think it fits Michigan State perfectly. It is the perfect size. It's a 2-deck approach. The upper deck is very small. So to me, it works, and it can create an imposing environment when Michigan State is good. But again, we're lacking any sort of uniqueness to it. It's just a pretty standard stadium, in my opinion. So that's why we're kind of getting to the average ones here at number 7. And then these top 6, I would consider these all at least good. So at number 6, it's Kinnick Stadium with Iowa. And this is a very good. We know Kinnick at night, it's miserable to go to. Very good environment for big games. You've got the different seating alignments with the colors, the combination of yellow and black. That's always aesthetically pleasing to look at. It does have the multi-deck approach, but it is kind of the perfect size, I would say, for Iowa and for what they do and kind of the program that they have. So that comes in at number 6. Moving to the top 5, at number 5, it is Nebraska Memorial Stadium. And I really like with this one, 2 different things. Number 1, the end zone wall of seating, and they always fill it. That's one of the crazy things about Nebraska, their fan base. The end zone wall of seating is massive, and then also probably the smallest upper deck around. I mean, I don't know if someone can point out a smaller upper deck than Nebraska. It reminds me of those, what are those, like bite-sized Milky Ways and Kit Kats and things like very, just extremely small, which honestly, I've said I like the smaller upper decks. That actually might be too small. It kind of just looks a little weird, but that comes in at number 5. It's a great environment. It's just Nebraska has not been good, but we would expect them at some point to improve. You know, maybe in the day and age of NIL, maybe with Matt Rhule. I know everyone said it with Scott Frost, but they have the environment, they have the crowd, they have the size to really be a good team in the Big Ten. Unfortunately for them, the Big Ten West is probably going to be no more with USC and UCLA joining, but Nebraska Memorial Stadium, it's one of the bigger stadiums in the Big Ten. We're starting to get into kind of some of the bigger ones, and it comes in at number 5. Moving to number 4, it is Camp Randall Stadium with Wisconsin. So this one, it just fits Wisconsin perfectly. It is a smaller stadium. They just remodeled one of the end zones, and it looks great. So that kind of gets some bonus points from me. But we know, the jump around, that's a unique feature of it. It does have an upper deck, but it's a smaller upper deck. And Wisconsin, when they're good, and they got Luke Fickell now, they are a very tough team to play at night when they're at home and they're good. It is miserable to go into Wisconsin and win at night. So that, they get a really, really good crowd. They feed off the energy. And overall, just looking at the stadium, I like it. I think it fits their campus really well. And with the renovation of the end zone, I've bumped it up to number 4 on my list. Really, it just depends what you like. I mean, if you like a bigger stadium, you're going to want Nebraska Memorial at number 4. But I'm going with Camp Randall just because I think it's a better environment overall at number 4. And then moving on to the top 3, I would say this is pretty much everyone's top 3, or at least most people. At number 3, it's going to be Michigan Stadium, which is the biggest college football stadium in the country. It seats, I think at this point, they're saying around 110,000. The capacity always seems to change with some of the really big stadiums by like 1,000 or 2 every single offseason. But Michigan Stadium, right around 110K. One bowl, just a massive bowl of fans. It's really aesthetically pleasing to look at from overhead, just that massive seating. And, listen, it's the biggest stadium in college football. It's going to have to be at least top 3. So I've got it at number 3 on my list. Moving to number 2, it is Ohio Stadium, the Horseshoe. They've recently, well, this wasn't recent. This was like back in 2014. They expanded their seating in one of the end zones, the student seating. And, I mean, Ohio Stadium, the uniqueness of it, the shape, the 2-deck approach, they're selling out every game. The only real knock you can say about Michigan Stadium and Ohio Stadium is the environment based on the capacity and the fans at the games, it is a little lacking. You would think they would be really imposing, and both of them, it just tends to be quieter, just a little bit quieter than some of the other stadiums that even have less fans in the stands. But Ohio Stadium, I mean, this is the exterior of it is really nice. I've always thought it was really clean, and just the shape of it is so unique. So to me, Ohio Stadium, it's a tier 1 stadium in college football, and it comes in at number 2 in terms of my list. And then at number 1, it is going to be Beaver Stadium, which is due to undergo a pretty big renovation here soon. And this is not based necessarily off, the overall seating, because I know it's dated. What I'm basing this off of is just how does it look, what is the environment like, and how unique is it? And to me, it checks all those 3 boxes. When they have their whiteout, there's not a better, environment in college football at this point, especially when they're facing a top 10 team. So Beaver Stadium, crazy seating, second biggest stadium in college football. Ohio Stadium is actually third biggest. So these are the top 3 biggest stadiums in all of the sport. And again, it is due for a renovation. We will see when that happens. But in terms of environment, in terms of seating uniqueness with kind of the different approaches, you've got the one side of the stadium with the multi-deck. You've got, kind of at the 50-yard line, the massive seating there. It's just so unique, and it looks so good when it has a whiteout or where they do the stripes or whatever it is. You're not going to find another stadium like that. I have to go with Beaver Stadium as my number 1 stadium for the Big Ten. If we're talking about the Coliseum for USC, I actually really like the Coliseum. The only issue with the Coliseum, like when USC joins the Big Ten, they struggle to sell that thing out. And it's just kind of like a SoCal thing. People don't, with college football. But I would put it at number 4 behind Michigan Stadium and in front of Camp Randall, the Coliseum. And then the Rose Bowl, I don't know, the Rose Bowl is kind of crap when it's not the Rose Bowl. Like when UCLA is hosting games, they just never sell it out. It's a pretty bad environment, but I would probably put it at like number 5 or number 6, right with Kinnick and Nebraska Memorial, somewhere within there in my rankings. So guys, those are my Big Ten Stadium rankings for 2023. That's going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description.